Hello again, my name's Aaron Fitzsimmons here at the surgical clinic, and I work with Amputee Bladerunners too. It's a charity we founded to give sports prosthetics to young adults and kids. So we wanted to try to find a format to give you guys information to help you understand how to navigate limb loss and limb difference. So one of the most basic starting points is how to hold your prosthesis on. There are a lot of ways to do that. I have organized it into two main ways with a lot of combinations, and the two main ways are either suction or some type of mechanical lock. Now, a suction system is then going to be divided to something that uses a sleeve. So I'm going to move a little bit while I show you this. So this would be a system that's very common that uses a sleeve. This one has an expulsion valve here. Some of the expulsion valves are built into the plate, so they're seamless, there's nothing sticking out. This is a demonstration model. But basically there's some type of liner like this that you would roll on to your limb. So you would roll this on. This particular liner has no fabric, we'll go over that in a minute. You would slide that into your limb. You'd have to do some arrangement of socks, and we'll talk about socks in another video. There'll be a lot of other informational sessions coming up. So this then rolls up, and as you walk, you push the air through this one-way valve. This is a duckbill valve. The two main valves are a duckbill or an umbrella valve. Then as you walk, that will seal off the air, and then this will not come off. So this being an external sleeve, there are some drawbacks to this and some advantages. Again, we'll talk about those in depth. That's a very common system. It is a little hotter, however it does distribute the pressure better. But there's a lot of drawbacks to the heat and the difficulty bending your knee. And the purpose of giving you all this information today is just so you can go in and have a more educated conversation with your prosthetist. So that's the purpose of it, is to go in and discuss what the best option might be for you in a team approach. Your prosthetist is going to make the best decision he can, but if you give him more information, it's your ship, and if he knows the destination you're going to, there's a better chance you'll get to that destination. So this isn't to tell you one is better than another, it's just options. So that is an external suction mechanism, would be with a sleeve. An internal suction mechanism would be some type of hypobaric system. Now I'm going to show you three types. So here's one type here with this one large ring. Here's one with a larger ring with gills on it. And here's one with four much smaller rings that slides in. We will talk about these in depth too. There are about 6 different types of hypobaric suction liners. The biggest advantage for these is you regain your range of motion because the seal is inside. The biggest disadvantage is there's more pressure with these because the old formula is pressure equals force divided by area. So the area of pressure is about 3 to 4 inches with these. The area of pressure with a system like this spreads it out over about 10 inches. So you have about a 3 times increase in pressure, but through proper desensitization, you will probably be able to manage that pressure safely, and desensitization is another topic we'll talk about in depth at another session, because it really requires a whole session to explain that for you, and we'll go through it. We have information also on how to do desensitization in documents that we could post for you guys to view as well. So that's the major drawback, is the pressure. Now, not only the range of motion improves with this, there's less heat because you don't have another sleeve on the outside. So I tell patients it's like the difference between wearing a sweater and a t-shirt is kind of how this is. The other big advantage is everybody gets holes in sleeves. If you've ever worn one, when you kneel down, when you bump up against something, you get a hole in the sleeve and then you have no suction. Since this suction is internal, I have this so you can actually see that the rings go down here and they mash against the walls of the socket, and then that's what holds it on. So it's basically kind of bulletproof because you can't get holes in this because it's protected by the socket. So your suction is maintained very well with this. And it also stops rotation. With the sleeve system, this tends to still rotate a little inside of here. Even with the best fit, you're still going to get a little bit of rotation inside of this socket. With this one, it tends to stop the rotation better because of this big rubber ring linking around the side here. So for instance, this will pop back into place. It won't twist on it. Then to get it off, there's different mechanisms, but they're all going to have some kind of expulsion valve where you push the button and you'll hear kind of the air and it pops out. So very easy. Slide in, you're on. These are just different variations that we'll go over advantages and disadvantages. Now, a really, really basic starting point, those are two suction mechanisms. So one is external and one is internal. With both of these suction mechanisms, you can have vacuum, which is a way to minimize the difference between swing phase and stance phase pressure so that you don't have positive and negative pressure. So when you step down on this, you get positive pressure from weight bearing. When you step up, you get negative pressure from distraction under weight bearing. So the vacuum keeps the same negative pressure on the limb at all times. You can either use vacuum with this and just vacuum down a 3-inch sealing surface, or you can vacuum down a 10-inch sealing surface. The difference is the linkage and proprioception, and in my experience, vacuum is more helpful for more difficult limbs. So if you have a shorter limb, more sensitive scarring tissue, it helps to minimize some of the need for sock adjustments for volume, and it also eliminates movement within the socket. But it is a tricky thing to maintain at all times, because to keep the vacuum, you have to have either your electronic or a manual pump, and then the pump has to be working properly, calibrated, serviced. So there's advantages and disadvantages. Now, a really basic mechanism is a pin lock. This will be some type of gel liner with a mechanical pin on it. And these pin locks come in two types, a cam or a ratchet. A ratchet lock has about 8th or 16th inch positions on this little pin. And a ratchet lock is noisy. You have a spring mechanism that pops in and out as you go in. So you hear that's what you hear with this popping back and forth. And so then that holds the leg on. The disadvantage is because it's anchored at one point, it's easy to rotate. And you also get milking, like a cow udder, to give you a very basic metaphor, which ends up putting a lot of pressure on the distal end of the leg. I recommend this system for somebody who walks less than 50% of the day. Long, extended walking and running and very athletic activities can become difficult to manage with a pin lock. It can be done, it's just harder to manage for the patient. Because all of this really comes down to you as the patient, not us as the leg makers, because we can make a lot of different stuff. It's really a matter of how much stuff do you want to keep up with and mess with. So it's just a matter of picking the right tool for the job with each disadvantage or advantage that's right for your lifestyle. So then to take this off, you just push this button in and it pops out. So a cam mechanism is another lock that we can go into another time. I don't have one here. It's a smooth mechanism. It doesn't make that noise when it goes in, and it also has more range of adjustment too, so you don't get caught in between locks. This one you can get caught in between locks and hear it clicking. The cam mechanism, you'd never hear that. Now, that's the different ways to hold your leg on. There's one more mechanical way, and that would be a very basic Velcro strap. One of the main reasons to choose that over this is with this, you have to stand into it to put it on. And when you stand into it, that is a different kind of force on your leg than if you pull your leg in. So sometimes with more redundant tissue, soft tissue, flabby tissue, the pin lock can be hard to get in because the pin moves around when you're trying to put your leg on because the tissue is flabby. With this, you have a much longer mechanism with this. So the big advantage is you can be sitting down and take this strap from way up here, have your leg this far away, and just reach down, stick that through the hole, and then you can pull your leg onto you. Like that. So then you can pull your leg on before you even stand up on it. So it's a little easier to put on when you're sitting down. You pull this to pull it all the way to the bottom, Velcro that down, and then that holds it on. This one's a little bit better about control and rotation than that one because you're anchored here and here, but both still have some rotation problems. They're both simpler, good ways to get started if it may be a loved one who's older and just needs to maintain independence at home or in an assisted living facility. Those are really good options. If they don't have good vision, a pin lock is good for them to be able to hear, to know that, oh, my leg's on because I could hear it click in. So again, those aren't necessarily the reason that you have to have that, but they might make more sense for you if that's a bigger need for you. Now, when it comes to liners, the only thing I'm going to touch on the liners today, because we'll go into it in depth, is all liners in the world are made of three materials. They're either silicone, urethane, or something called TPE, which is thermoplastic elastomer. So the reason I bring that up is some people may be having a problem with a prosthesis that's related to the liner, because it's important that you understand what your prosthesis is broken into three main parts, and each one of them has to fit you right. So you've got to have a liner that fits you right, number one. You've got to have a socket that fits you right, number two. And you've got to have parts that fit you right. Now, those are in order of importance. So you can have the fanciest foot, the fanciest socket, but if you have a bad liner, none of that will work. So the liner is number one most important, because that's like the foundation of the house that you build with your prosthesis. And I use the metaphor for people and patients that if you built your house on a wood foundation, it would eventually rot. So you want to build your house on a concrete foundation, because that's what a house has to be built on. So that's the same theory with this. You have to build on the foundation that makes sense for your skin type. So for a lot of patients, TPE is a good choice for starting out because it has no memory. Silicone and urethane have high memory, which means they're going to want to return to their original shape, not the shape of your leg. So a TPE liner will change shape with your leg more than a urethane or silicone liner, which is good if it's your first time using a prosthesis, because your limb is going to change by as much as 5 to 8 centimeters in circumference within the first year. So if you have a liner that doesn't change, you're going to have to get new liners every couple of months to match that limb shape, because once one of these, if your measurement on your limb for the liner is 28 and they put you into a size 28 liner, and within 2 weeks the measurement at the bottom of your leg is 26, that liner will be too big. And then you can add socks, but it won't change the fact that the actual liner on your leg is too big, and you'll get friction and movement. And the size range for TPE liners is more like 8 to 10 centimeters. Again, I'm not saying everybody who gets first prosthesis should use TPE. It's just a very important variable to consider if volume fluctuations are going to be a bigger part of your prescription for your prosthesis. And that depends on some of your other health conditions, what got you here in that place to start with, as far as why you had an amputation. So all those things are important, and we'll talk about specific advantages and disadvantages of liner materials. That'll be a talk we'll do. We'll talk about each suspension separately, advantages and disadvantages that might make sense for you. We'll talk about desensitization, we'll talk about sweat management, and we'll talk about volume loss and sock management. What is a stump sock? When do I need it? What are the different kinds? Those are all important topics, and we're working to put together documented material. We have some already, so that'll be available. If that's something you want, just let us know, and we can get in touch with you to give you that information. The more information you have to start a discussion with your prosthetist, the better the end result will be for you as a patient.